Welcome to the Science and Spirituality Podcast, where we dive deep into universal spiritual principles and ground them in modern science. My name is Chris Carden.
And my name is Kevin Carden. And we are committed to simplifying the spiritual side of success for you with easy to understand scientific research so you could walk away with practical tools to create radical transformations in your life. Let's get started. All right, so welcome to another episode of the Science and Spirituality Podcast. This is another special episode. It seems like we're getting more and more special episodes recently.
Yes.
Last week we released a meditation that I created. So this is another special episode. We have a special guest, my good friend, Alex Macfarlane. We met here in Colorado over 2 years ago at a business networking group. And our relationship, we've just grown so much closer as friends. And I'm bringing him today on the podcast because there's a topic that is extremely important that I think everyone needs to hear. And so just a quick bio on Alex. He is a financial professional that has worked with hundreds of business owners and individuals and families. And he found that while he was assisting his clients in investing in business planning and retirement planning, that there was a major missing piece of education that few financial advisors spoke about, which is understanding emotions and mindsets around money. And so he, with this realization, then shifted his practice to incorporating Zen and Buddhist mindfulness techniques, which I was just blown away by when we first started to connect. I've went to some of his workshops, and so I'm just really excited to dive deeper into this topic and share it with y'all because it's such an important part of spirituality and just honestly life itself, but to bring the spirituality, the mindfulness into this space, which is often mindless. Mm-hmm. So let's dive into it. So welcome, Alex. Excited to have you here and let's do it.
Yeah.
So
thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's begin this way. And funny that you both were just talking about this before the podcast, but let's rehash it of how did you get into this? Like how did these two vastly different worlds come together? Like what was your story? Just tell us.
Yeah. It started when I began to have a couple different types of clients who had similar backgrounds with what they had with their financial, I guess their overall financial situation was similar. So I had a couple clients, one woman, for example, who had maybe $30,000 that she was making a year. And then another woman who had a similar amount. And the one woman who was making $30,000 a year, she was really happy with what she had. And she was also always believing that she had enough. And this was a consistent thought that she always had when I was speaking with her. She was always happy and excited with where she was going. And she always felt that she had enough. And then another woman who I was working with, she was making a bit more, about $35,000, $40,000 a year. And this is right in the beginning of my financial professional career. And this woman on the other side, she felt that she always needed to get more. And it wasn't enough to have the $35,000, $40,000 a year for her. She wanted to have a lot more money. And she was living in this state of fear that she wasn't going to have enough to support herself throughout her life. And what I saw while working with these two people, they happened to be near the same time. The woman who was making about $30,000 a year and was happy with what she had started to slowly and incrementally building that wealth and becoming more and more wealthy, while the woman who was making a bit more at the time started losing the money that she had and was living more in a state of fear. So at that time, I became really curious about wanting to know more about this because I saw two people who started off in the same boat financially, but then one person had a different mindset and started making more money, seemingly with a lot less effort than the other person who was working a lot harder trying to get the more money for her to be better off. So that was the beginning of me diving into understanding about emotions around money and how a mindset of feeling that you have enough can give you a different way of abundance than the mindset of feeling like you need more.
Yeah. And I think we talked about just this idea a lot on this podcast about, because you're a life coach, I'm sure you see this kind of mindset just maybe with money as well, but also with a lot of other things where I feel like there's a mentality that you can be super grateful for what you have and want more without it being that like fear-based kind of thinking. Because some people are like, they miss out on that point of being grateful for what they have. And so that without that base, it's hard to get more because you're not every day waking up and being like, thank you for what I have. I'm welcoming more. You're always looking for more and more and more. And so it's like switching from the mindset of either or both end.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly way to put it. Yeah, definitely. And I love the quote, true abundance flows from enough, never from more. And when you feel like you have enough, you wake up in the morning and you feel happy. So your energy reflects that around you. Versus if you wake up in the morning and you feel like you don't have enough, you're going to feel anxious. You're probably going to feel a bit upset. And that energy is going to reflect back to you as well. So the energy really makes sense when you look at it at that angle. If you wake up happy and you feel grateful, you're going to find happy things around you and people are going to want to interact with you. You're probably going to find clients to work with. All of a sudden the doors will open. Versus the person who's neurotic and stressed all the time, no one really wants to hang out with that person. And you can see from that beginning place how money can flow into your life.
Yeah, definitely. Do you like in over working with hundreds of clients and stuff, have you worked with people who really were struggling with just getting their basic needs met, and how you shifted their mindset into them feeling like they have enough, even though when it really felt like they didn't?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a couple clients who I worked with that come to mind. A lot of it comes from the fear, or I guess there's a way that you can look at money that's based around a belief system that causes people to act in certain ways. And the big one, the subconscious fear that really controls people, subconscious belief that really controls people around money, is that money equals security, or money equals worthiness. And if you believe that money will give you security or will give you worthiness, and it always will give you security and worthiness, it will always be fleeting and you'll always be trying to get more. So you have to switch your mindset to try and think differently, and realizing that money isn't the source of your security or worthiness. It comes from within you. And so when working with people who don't have very much, it's usually based around those feelings that they have, that money equals worthiness, that makes them perpetuate the state of lack that they're in. Because when they don't have money, then all of a sudden they're unworthy. They don't have money, they're unworthy. They don't have money, they're unworthy. And when they get a little bit of money, they feel worthy, but then they lose it. And then all of a sudden the cycle repeats itself. So it's switching the mindset and realizing that you can find inner security and inner worthiness without having money first, but it takes a little time and some practice. And that's what you usually have to work with in the beginning.
And that's it's like just such at odds with what we're brought up to believe. And again, not just money. Like I feel like what you're talking about really goes into every aspect of life, where we feel like when things outside of us change, then we can feel better about ourselves inside. Whereas it's the other way around. It's really changing your inside world, then the outside world will reflect that. And that's so hard from a conceptual, maybe it's not as hard from a conceptual point to understand it, but then when you actually put it into practice, because we're just not used to doing that as humans. We grow up looking towards our outside world for that security and for that validation, that it becomes hard to switch the script. But it's imperative. And I'm sure like you working with your clients and you working with your clients, and even just hearing stories from Mary Morrissey and Dream Builder, and just every success story usually starts with someone changing something on the inside. And we read books and we look at it and we go, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then we go out into our life and it's hard to put that on.
Definitely.
When you've been living a certain way for so long.
So with that, then it can actually flows beautifully into a question I want to ask you, Alex. Is you talk about it starts from within, finding the security within. So for people listening who are getting this, like, yes, either maybe I've heard this before, or it's making sense a lot now, and this is the first time I'm hearing it. So what's that step? Like, what would be the first step? Like, how do you help people find that security within? Yeah.
So it starts first with the awareness of realizing that you're the source of everything in your life. That's a really big one. And one way to look at this is to realize that things that happen to you, you have the ability to react to always. Event plus reaction equals outcome. Event's always fixed. Your reaction is always going to be variable. So you can change how you react to change the outcome. So one thing you can think about to realize that you're always the source of everything in your life is to have this visualization technique. So go ahead and close your eyes. And if you're driving, don't do that, but just take a second to think about this concept that I lay in your mind. I want you to picture in your mind a lottery ticket. And on the lottery ticket, you look at the front of it. It says you've won $1 million. Go ahead and feel what that feels like to have $1 million lottery ticket in your hand. I'm going to ask you, Kevin, how you feel when you see $1 million lottery ticket in your hand.
Just light.
Light.
I feel like the cells of my being have just been uplifted into vibration.
Excellent. Great. And how about you, Chris? How do you feel?
So I felt similar, but then there was like a feeling almost directly after where it's like, oh, what am I going to do with this money?
Okay.
You know what I mean? So I feel like there's there was almost some like unconscious fear that just kind of came up and was like, hey, you know, you got the $1 million, but like, how long can you keep it?
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Yep. That's a common one, actually. Yeah. Okay. So great. Thanks for sharing. Now close your eyes again. And now picture that same lottery ticket, have the $1 million winner on the front side of the ticket, and flip it over, and you realize it's expired. It's not worth $1 million. It's trash. Now, how do you feel? Kevin, how do you feel?
Well, the first word that came to mind is not something I would say on this podcast. So just I mean, decrease in the vibration is just like,
gotcha.
100%.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
How about you, Chris?
Yeah, same. Just back to how I was feeling before I found out I won.
Okay.
Yeah.
For sure. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. So what I just did is I just gave you a thought to picture in your mind, and then it generated a source of feelings from within you. All I did was just make you think of something that didn't exist in reality, just in your mind. And then I switched it and flipped it over and showed you that actually there wasn't a lottery ticket, and you had a different feeling that came up, more negative. So you're the source of everything in your life. Everything that comes into your mind creates a feeling from you that is generated outward towards whatever you were interacting with. So when you understand that concept, you can realize that you have the power to change your situation depending on how you react to events.
Right. And I think the work that you're doing is so important too, I feel, because I mean, I don't have statistics about this, but I feel like the fear of money or not having enough financially, or, you know, is one of the big fears of a lot of people. Maybe, and especially in America, and especially now, I think it is one of the top ones.
It's top 6,
Yeah.
actually, according to Napoleon Hill in his book, Think and Grow Rich. I mean, he studied 30,000 people, and like the most successful people in the world at the time in the early 1900s. And in his book, Think and Grow Rich, there's he calls it the 6 ghosts of fear. And one of them is fear of poverty.
Yeah.
And there's like, you know, death and old age and fear of loss of, I think it's love. There's a couple others I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Fear of poverty is big.
Yeah. And I was just going to tie that into just the work, because I'm in the medical field, like as an acupuncturist, and the thing you just described about the thoughts and the feelings, like it's literally affecting the way all of your major organs are functioning as well. And so if you're going out into the world and you're always stressed about money, that's going to affect the way you digest food. It's going to affect everything about your life, your autonomic nervous system, all that. And it's like a self-perpetuating circle almost.
Definitely.
So it's about getting under the hood and responding to situations, you know, in a way that's empowering to you.
Without a doubt. Yeah. And so getting back to what you asked before, Kevin, how to help move through the process of feeling more secure with where you're at. It starts with understanding the belief system that you have around money, which is most likely based around not feeling secure or worthy. And when you're coming from a place of fear because you don't have enough and you have the belief that you don't have worthiness because of money, you limit your scope of possibility. So fear limits you. It kind of puts up blinders. Yeah. Rather than having a 360 view, you're looking just at a certain thing and you're focused based around fear. And a story that I tell clients is one day I was driving to a networking meeting and I was late. And at the networking meeting, there was a client that I really wanted to impress, or a potential client I really wanted to impress. And I didn't want to be late for this guy. He was someone I really wanted to work with. And I hit traffic and I knew it was gonna be 10, 15 minutes late. So my body was in a state of neurosis almost. I was like shaking. I was like, shit, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm gonna be late for this client. This is a big opportunity. I'm gonna lose it. And as I was sitting in traffic, I saw a cloud go over my head, and it was a beautiful, like multicolored cloud. And I looked at the cloud and felt appreciation that I was actually just being able to sit in my car and see a cloud. So a feeling of gratitude came up from looking in the sky and seeing the cloud. And it washed over me, and it moved me from a place of fear to gratitude. And then I got to the networking meeting late, showed up, but I wasn't in a state of fear. I was in a state of calmness, because gratitude can lead to being calm. And being calm, especially in business environments, is naturally sought after. You have confidence. And so the client, or the potential client at the time, he and I interacted after the meeting, and he didn't care that I was late. He just cared about my energy. My energy was calm and confident. If I had come into that meeting with, shaky, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't believe I'm late, gosh, what am I doing? I would have not landed that client, and I eventually did land my client. But that idea of realizing that fear limits your scope of possibilities, and you can begin to generate feelings of gratitude rather than fear, opens yourself up to possibilities that are much bigger than you can realize.
Yeah. That reminds me of like when you're talking about gratitude, and that's a state that we choose by the thoughts that we think and where we place our attention and focus, is The Science of Getting Rich. I think I know you've read it, Chris, right? Have you read it?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. Yeah. You listening, if you have not read that book, it's phenomenal. I highly recommend it. The Science of Getting Rich. It's like the most most succinct way to get rich, to increase in abundance, which is good, by the way. He covers that. It's like literally chapter 1, the right to be rich. Yeah. But anyway, chapter 7 is gratitude. And to paraphrase one particular part of that chapter, he talks about how when you're focused on the best, you tend to attract the best in your life because you're looking for the best and you'll find the best and you become the best. So it's all just like what you look for, you will receive. Definitely. So it's right in alignment with that. It's a great example.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's how you can find inner security, is finding gratitude in your everyday life. And when you wake up in the morning and you feel like there's something you need, you're removing a bit of the gratitude and the light that you can shine outward, which is going to make abundance a lot easier to maintain.
Yeah.
And also get.
Yeah, exactly. And that is, I think it's challenging because I remember like in the early days of my business, I mean, we've been friends for so long. You remember the days of my business where I was like struggling financially. Yeah. And so I'm curious to know like what your take is. And if someone is struggling financially and hears all this, like, all right, this sounds great, but I'm feeling that fear. Like I'm feeling like so stuck and like where's the money going to come from for the end of the month? And I've heard this joke that it's like, there's more month at the end of my money, like instead of the opposite. Totally. Yeah. So like, what would you say to someone who's in that state, like how to then access this state of inner security through gratitude? Like, I don't know. Do you have anything that you'd share on that?
Yeah. There's a way you can create your own inner security, and that takes practice and discipline to move through, but it's essentially looking at your emotions that you have around money and realizing that it's okay. A lot of the times what happens with us when we grow up is we get told stories from parents or grandparents that we need to be a certain way in order to get something. So for me, my grandparents told me that I needed to have a great degree in order to have a beautiful wife, a beautiful home, and money, which was bullshit. But I internalized that throughout my life. And that became a big thing for me to understand when I became older and dived into this. My worthiness was attached to that belief system of needing something outside of myself to get somewhere. Yeah. So the first step to realize to understand is to go back in your memory and think of a time where you were told that you need something outside of yourself to be secure or to be worthy. And there's usually a big one. If you dive deep into it, it's to realize with your parents, maybe it was your mom or your dad told you this, maybe it was a school teacher, it could have been anybody, but we internalize this feeling that we need something outside of ourselves to get something, and tap into that and just be aware that that story was told to yourself. And as you become aware of that, look at that and find what emotions are there underneath the surface. And so we can do it with you, Kevin, if you want, real quick, if that's all right.
Sure. Yeah. We've talked about this as well. It's like one belief that came up for me that I became aware of in the last year and a half, but I'm down to go through it just to give an example.
Okay. So what's on the story that you've been told when you were younger that you needed something outside of yourself to be worthy or secure?
So it wasn't as direct as this is why I feel like it took so long to like uncover, because I've been like becoming aware of like my own patterns for the last 7-8 years. But it was only in the last year and a half that I came aware of this, that I had a story that I learned from my mom and my dad, which, I mean, Chris had some similar story because obviously we have the same parents. But I feel like I internalized it more. I think it's because of my own makeup and who I am, is that I want to be known. And so the story that my mom and dad would say, if we would go past like a really fancy house or a nice car or something expensive, my mom or dad would say, oh, that's for the rich and the famous. And so the belief that was instilled in me is that if I want to be rich, if I want to have money, I need to be famous. Or if I want to be famous, then I need money. One or the other, they both go together, which then showed up in how I grew an Instagram account to like grow a business, but like go figure in the first 2 years of business, like, or year and a half, like it was a challenge, even though my following, my audience was like growing and larger. So I was like, wait, what is going on here? There's something missing. Yeah. So that was like the belief is like both of those have to go together, because I wanted to be rich. Like I want to have a lot of money to then do things with and, you know, shower gifts on my friends and family. So yeah. So
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
mine.
Yeah. And and how did that make you feel? Just like remembering that feeling, remember that experience. Is there any emotions that come up?
Around like when my parents would say that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I felt kind of annoyed about it because I felt like it wasn't true, but for how many times they told me it, like it just ingrained in me. So like, but still it was just annoyed.
Yeah. And deeper underneath the surface of annoyance, was there something other than that? What was, maybe if you could search a bit deeper, was it anger, maybe frustration, sadness?
Probably anger. So yeah, there's only a handful of like negative emotions, but yeah, anger definitely, because I was annoyed because I felt like there was another way to look at it that's not always true.
Yeah.
And so I was angry at them for not having an expanded perception, I think.
Okay. So yeah, anger is a similar way you can feel with fear too. You limit your scope of possibilities.
Yeah.
So when you feel angry, you're going to be focused on something in front of you rather than looking to your left or your right. Same with fear. So when you're angry about a belief system that you have from money, from an experience, it can relate into your life because you're focusing on something directly in front of you rather than looking around because it's based around fear or based around something that's not gratitude. And so, yeah, going back into that, that can be a way to understand a bit more about why you interact with money based on an experience you had that leads you to the belief that you need something outside of yourself to feel secure, to feel worthy. And you go deeper in with it too. So this process, I think it depends on where everyone's at. And sometimes when I do speak on these subjects, it will trigger people because there's a lot of emotional baggage that we carry with money. And it's okay to be triggered when whatever I say brings an emotion that comes up with you. I love the Rumi quote, when there's a trigger, there's a wound, and when the wound is where the light enters. So this information, a disclaimer before I go in deeper, this information won't work if you are in complete poverty. If you are in desolation and don't have water or food to eat, you're not going to be wanting to hear this information. True. You need to drink water and eat food in order to have your health be intact. So health is way more important than this information, because in order to have this information sink in, you need to have your health. Yeah. So that's a disclaimer. If you are not able to eat food or not able to drink water right now, please go find some food and water. And there's a USDA hotline you can find, and find different food banks around you. Moving forward. So when we go past the idea or begin to understand the idea of an experience that has made us believe that we have this idea around money, that we need it in order to feel secure or worthy, there's a mental condition in which we can accept the worst. And in Zen, they call that peace of mind. Peace of mind is a mental condition in which you accept the worst. So a lot of times we are afraid of putting ourselves out there because we're afraid of becoming broke. What you can do is begin to realize that even if you are, well, let's just go ahead in this exercise. Let's do this. Okay. So another exercise, I want everyone to close your eyes, and this is going to be deep. So if you're driving, definitely pull over for this. And I want everyone to close your eyes and imagine what it feels like to be completely broke. And when I say broke, I mean, there's no family to support you. You have friends, but they're all broke with you. You have the clothes on your back. You have, a living situation that's very, very, very minimal, but you have no money in the bank account. Now go ahead and feel what that feels like to be that broke. When you're ready, Chris, I'll ask you to share if that's all right with you.
Yeah, since I've never been in that situation before, like immediately my mind goes to like, all right, like where am I going to apply for jobs? Like, what am I going to do? But it's interesting because when I'm in that place, what I'm more afraid of is what other people are going to think of me in that situation. Like what did I do to lose my money? And what did I do to put myself out there? And why am I broke? You know what I mean?
Yes,
like,
totally. Worthiness. It's
exactly. Yeah.
I know. I have the same belief.
So it's like, I know that if I'm ever in that position where I'm super broke, I can go get a job somewhere and make like minimum wage. And I'm like, that's going to hurt my ego. Kind of thing.
Awesome.
So that's where I went with that.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. Perfect. And what about you, Kevin? How did you feel?
Straight up victim.
Yeah.
Like it was interesting that, because I pride myself in like taking personal responsibility that whatever is happening in my life, like it's coming from me. But like the first initial thing was like, what happened to me? Like, it wasn't my fault. Like,
right.
There's no way this could be my fault. But like, then the awareness kicked in. I was like, wait a minute, like if I'm there, like that was my creation. So like, but the first thing was like victim, like I shouldn't be here. Gotcha. Like just kind of like rejecting it or like having resistance.
Yeah. So maybe unworthiness for both of you almost at a deep level, just feeling like unworthy, just kind of like how the hell did this happen?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's go back into that mindset now. Close your eyes again. Thanks for sharing. And now I want you to go in that same environment, feel yourself being broke. Just have the clothes on your back. Very minimal place. Maybe you're sleeping on a park bench. You really have nothing. And now imagine what it feels like to feel secure or to feel worthy even with nothing. What would you have to start appreciating in order to feel secure or to feel worthy? And Chris, when you're ready, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say just the fact that like I'm alive, and because I'm alive, I have possibility to make something different of myself.
Excellent.
And then again, to feel super, and maybe it's just, again, something deeper that I have to work on, but to feel super clear, I was like, I just know no one. There's no one to see me like that that's going to care.
Yeah.
So I don't care. It's like, I'll get out of this, because it's like, but there's no pressure, like outside pressure. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm like needing to be someone or something.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Awesome. And Kevin, how about you?
For me, it went like, cause right when I get back into the visualization, it was like victim. But then, as I said, like after I thought about it a bit more, like I would come out of it, like even the previous visualization that I like know was my own fault. Like, all right, so then what I was grateful for, like initially, was just my mind, my awareness, my ability to change, and much like, you know, possibilities, because that's not lost. Like everything that I've done in my life is still with me. And so no matter what circumstance I'm faced with, I know I can get out of it, but not only because it's me and my awareness, but I know I'm connected with the higher power. Like I connected with, like, I'm grateful that I have a heart and my breath, but that's given to me. Like I can't beat my heart once on my own. Yeah. So like just grateful for that connection and how much I've developed that, especially over the last year. I've been really focusing on that. So that was like real deep gratitude for that.
Awesome. Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you both for sharing. That's great. So it's getting back in the sense of gratitude, even when you had nothing. So Chris, when you mentioned that you're just thankful to be alive, and you're thankful to be able to just know that you have the capability to create whatever life you want. Yeah. That is the stepping stone of how usually entrepreneurs who go broke become billionaires. There's so many stories of these massive wealth, or these massive billionaires who make a lot of money, or multimillionaires make a lot of money, who usually have hit a point of breaking where they become completely broke, and then they bounce back because they believe in themselves so much, because there's nothing else to lose.
It's like, yeah, I'm already here. It can't go lower than this, basically, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I was watching a show on Netflix the other day, and there was two guys talking around a campfire, and one of them was, he had terminal cancer, and he was like, he basically had like 48 something hours to live, like really like no time. And his friend was like complaining about like, oh, like, you know, I'm 40, whatever, like I don't have like a wife or this. And the guy was like, you have something that like I can never have. And he's like, what's that? He's like, time. So you have time. Like you can, no matter how bad your life seems now, like you're not dying of cancer. Like you have 30, 40, 50 years maybe still left where you can turn your situation around. And that's something that, again, I don't know if you've ever done this exercise where like you close your eyes and just imagine what's going to be like on your deathbed. Wow. It's like, it's hard to imagine that one day you're just going to be laying there and it's going to be the end for you. But like when you actually think into that and feel it, it's like, God damn. Wow. It's like a lot of, it's like crazy that you don't think that's going to happen to you. Yeah. It's like, no way. I have so much time, but it's like, you know, I just wanted to bring that up because that's kind of like what I was feeling in that moment where I was like, you know what? Like I have time. Yeah. And then again, too, that whole rock bottom thing. It's like, all right, like I'm broke. Like all my parents can see me like this, but there's only up to go from here. So now I felt this and I know that I can survive like this. So now there's only can use that as a stepping stone, like you said, to move forward. Yeah.
Exactly. And if you can get to that place, and it takes practice sometimes, for a lot of people, it takes practice. It did for me. If you get into that place, you can begin to have this inner confidence with you that will shine outward into your external environment. Because rather than coming from a place of fear, you're coming from a place of confidence. You're coming from a place, like I can actually create whatever life I want because I've accepted the fact that I could be broke, but I could still be okay.
Yeah.
And so that is the beginning of understanding that you can create a whole different feeling within you that can generate a different world outside of you. peace of mind is a mental condition. You accept the worst.
Yeah.
And going through that process and practice with people has been really powerful, because that's a way you can generate a lot of different types of abundance in your life by going through this rock bottom and then hitting yourself back up.
Just a quick note about this exercise and what we're talking about is we're not recommending anyone to try to become broke to test this. This is hypothetical and just a mental exercise. So just a disclaimer. Now let's get back into it.
Is that a tenet of Buddhism? I think you mentioned before, the accepting the worst is state of mind. Like
Yep.
peace?
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, that's Zen.
Okay, because that makes perfect sense. But it's kind of hard to do that sometimes too. But that's like even sometimes when I'm like trading, like I'll be like, all right, I'll invest this much money, and if I lose all of it, I'll have I lose that much money. But then if you accept that, it's like, all right, like anything from here is like a little better than that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
So trading, you can really relate to this. So this is a really great, and I do this technique with myself and also some clients as well. If you are comfortable with whatever you put into the market being gone, you will make much better decisions than if you are constantly trying to keep that money intact.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens when you put money into the market and you're always trying to make sure it's going up is you're going to have this state of neurotic tendencies. You're going to be much less clear, much less disciplined, and a lot less peace of mind than if you had the idea of like, this is play money.
Yeah.
It's okay if this goes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to let this sit and let it ride. Most of the time when that happens, you get returns. When you are constantly trying to change your money situation, money doesn't like that. It doesn't like to be just constantly, messed with. I always look at it like a lover. Like if you're dating somebody, do you want to have somebody who always like, hey, come on, like come here, like come back, go over there, go back, go over there. Just like you would with a trading account when you're constantly trading. No, you want to just have it sit. You want to let it be for a bit. And then you appreciate the money that goes up, and if it goes away for a bit, it's okay. It's not a big problem. And and that's a big one you can use with trading.
100%.
Yeah.
It's like, that it makes so much sense. Just given like my history and like thinking about like stuff, like it's like, wow, that totally helps.
Yeah.
Also throughout this whole podcast too, I've been thinking of another just idea that most humans believe that they're rational, but like humans are super emotional.
Yes.
And so I think it's like understanding that we're emotional creatures. It makes a lot of these behaviors make a lot more sense.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. It's really understanding your emotions is 90% of the game.
Yeah. In everything, not even just money. Like I feel like what's so important and special about what you're doing is that I feel like in money that's missing. Yeah. Or in a lot of other areas that's starting to creep up, where it's like job, you need to be emotionally involved in it, like relationships, emotionally involved. When you talk about money, it's almost a stone cold thing where it's like, you're gonna put your money there, you're gonna leave it, like you're gonna give it to someone, he's gonna make it grow, or she's gonna make it grow. But when you involve this emotion in it, it actually helps a lot with people feeling good about it, which I think is super important. Yeah,
without a doubt. Yeah, it's really wild to see people feel a different shift in how they feel about money, from a place of hatred or anger or disillusion, not wanting anything to do with it, to falling in love with it in a sense. And falling in love with it, not in a way where you constantly need it to be around, but you're in love with it where it also loves you. And it goes and it comes, and it's a flow, just like life. It ebbs and flows, as does money. And if you get into this mindset of realizing that it's going to be okay when it goes, because it's always going to come back, you feel a lot less stress. But it takes practice and it takes discipline to keep moving through this and doing this for yourself. But it's worth it so much.
Yeah, definitely.
With that, just another question for you is like, do you have any like certain practices that you do? Like those exercises were fantastic. And I know like it's been a long time since your workshop, but I remember us going through that. So it was great to go through it again to get more of those, repetitions of it, to learn those more.
Yeah.
But like, do you have anything that you do on like a daily or weekly basis that like really keeps your emotions, I don't even want to say in check, because the emotions are there. They're going to do what they're going to do. You work with them and learn from them and all this stuff. But like, how would you put it? Like, what I'm talking about? Like, how would you put it around money? Like,
definitely.
Yeah.
For me, I was always upset because I would spend a lot of money. So I would make a lot of money, but I would spend it. So I'd find myself wealthy and then broke, wealthy, broke. And so for me, something that I've changed in my day-to-day life is expressing gratitude for spending my money.
Yes.
So saying thank you for what I'm spending my money on and where this money is going to and what this money is now bringing to me.
Yep.
And so when I spend money, using those words, so simple, gives us such a different energy when I'm spending my money. Because now I don't feel regret. I'm like, man, I shouldn't be spending this, but I'm doing it anyway. It's more, thank you for giving me the opportunity to have this thing that I'm getting. And wherever this is going, That's great. I hope this just shines light to that person as well.
Mm.
So it shifts the energy a lot around spending. And then so receiving, you can do the same thing. Whenever you receive, just say thank you.
Yeah.
Always be in the mindset of thank you.
Yeah.
And those 2 words will change your whole world around money.
It's funny you use that as I could share that as an example, because literally this morning when I picked up my car from the shop, I was getting the auto start taken out. And I was thinking like, it's like $125. I already paid 50 of it. And I was like going into it, it's like, I'm going to consciously think like, thank you for this service. Because, you know, $125 for like what I thought was like such a tiny little thing to like take out or whatever. Part of me was like, that's pretty expensive, like for the tiny little thing that happened. But I was like, no, like it is what it is. I have the money and I'm grateful that I have it. So it's like, this is the service I got. So I focus more on that. And it's just such a more pleasant experience.
Yeah.
So it's powerful. And like, I remember it wasn't too long ago, probably like sometime in the last year or a year ago, that I would have trouble with groceries. Like when I would think about it, it was just a pattern because I was financially fine for groceries, but I noticed, and this took a couple of months to really shift, where it shifted to now that's just my habit, that when I buy groceries and I, you know, see the $80, $90, $100, especially now that I'm eating a different diet and like healthier foods, like today it was like $133 that we got. And it's easy. It's just like, thank you. I love this. This is great. And I'm so grateful for what I get for it. So like that took some time to shift, but it wasn't too long ago that I would be stressed when I would think about like the money coming out of my bank account for groceries, like just basic needs, like, but it's such a different experience when you're just grateful for it. It's awesome.
Definitely.
It's like adding more intention to your life, really. And that's like a big thing. I think in probably half of our episodes, we mention awareness because that's like the starting point of so many things that we talk about. It's like, you got to be aware first. And then once you're aware, you take the locus of control back from the outside into the inside, then you can make moves.
Yes.
And I feel like so many people, and Joe Dispenza talks about this, and he probably, you know, Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he's probably explained it the best way that I've ever could. So if anyone's listening, you can watch some of his YouTube videos, but just how we live in patterns so often that we become a slave to the pattern and we don't even realize it's happening. And I feel like that's like, this is very eye-opening for me, this podcast episode, because not even just that exercise, I've known that there's been some things around money that I've had to deal with, just going from making X amount to, we were talking about this before, making this amount, and just kind of my feelings around that.
Well,
and
explain that just for someone listening.
Yeah,
really
so I started out my career in accounting as like a CPA, and I did that for 3 years. And, you know, in that field, you have a very nice career path where every year you're going to get promoted, you're going to be making more money. And so I never worried about money at all. Like I always knew that I had enough, take vacations every year, whatever. I knew money was always going to come back to me. But then quitting my job and going back to school full time and then going into a completely different industry, it's just, I don't know exactly where my money's coming from every 2 weeks now, because I haven't established myself in the field of acupuncture yet. And so because I have those fears, it's like, like, I don't know where this is coming from. And a big thing that I realized today on the podcast was what other people are going to think about me. Because I even thought, like, you know what, if I can't find, because my parents always say this all the time too, is like, if you can't find an acupuncture job right away, or if you don't want to start out on your own right away, you have your accounting degree, you're still a CPA, like you can go get a job. And I'm like, that's going to like a blow to me almost. Cause like I left that, but that's totally fine. Like I know that I'm going to be okay when I think about it. It's just sometimes I'm very resistant because I want it to be my way versus thinking about that I'm actually going to be okay no matter what happens. So that was like a really big realization for me. So that helped a lot.
Nice.
So I thank you for that.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. I hope other people are having those types of realizations from this podcast too, because this is literally out of almost 50 episodes. This is probably the first one we actually like dove into money.
Yeah.
I think we've touched on it as examples.
Like people don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's true. It's
kind of
so
like taboo.
Yeah. Once you start opening up the way to understand that it can feel good to talk about money, it can change your entire world.
Yeah.
You just got to start practicing. Like, let's start talking about money. Just slowly start talking about it. And eventually you'll get more used to it and it'll become a lot easier. And then you can start becoming aware of it and then change your practices.
Exactly.
100%.
Yeah. It has to do. This is the path, you know, like, because just as you were saying that, I was thinking about the total opposite end of the spectrum of people who don't want to talk about money. One example is like the fear is like, well, if someone doesn't have enough, then it's like, why do they want to talk about it? Because it's painful. So they shove it down and those patterns repeat and then they pass it on to their friends, their family, their kids, whatever. And that's just the cycle, you know, but now the work that you're doing, obviously the work that Chris and I are doing, our own patterns, and like anyone else listening that are focusing on their money and then transform the relationship with it, that like will literally transform the world over time. So it's awesome.
And then if anyone has any doubts about this type of work too, it's like, just look at previous lotto winners. A lot of them end up broke because
Yep.
they don't do this. They don't
Yeah.
change the internal conversation they have about money. And in 5 years, the average lottery winner ends up broke again
Yep.
because
Yep.
they didn't change their habits or the way they felt about themselves.
Yep.
They were super happy when the outside reality changed, but nothing changed on the inside. And so eventually things even out.
Yeah.
So true. Usually the faster you make it, the faster you lose it. The slower you make it, usually the more able you're to hold on to it.
It's almost like because it's like the that idea about putting the frog in the boiler, and if you slowly raise the temperature, it'll stay in there. But if you raise it too high, it jumps out. It's like you give your body enough time to normalize that when you make it slowly.
Yeah.
So when you make it up, it's like,
Yeah.
and then it's like, okay, it
Yeah.
kind of comes back down.
Brings everything to the surface.
Yeah.
Mostly of your subconscious beliefs,
Yep.
the trauma.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. This is awesome. So is there anything else that you wanted to share, Alex? Like anything else that you had in mind or any other questions from you, Chris? Because I feel really complete with this, but if there's anything else that you wanted to share.
I don't think so. Just while you were speaking, I just remembered a Ram Dass quote about the resistance of an idea. So when you resist the idea of wanting to learn about money, Ram Dass had the quote, the resistance to the unpleasant situation is the root of suffering. So the more you resist, the more powerful something will become. The more you tap into it and accept that this is happening, the easier it is going to be work through this. So everyone who does want to not talk about money, just remember that and try to just shift it to be more acceptive of having the conversation.
Exactly. Like what I tell my clients is what you resist persists. It's a nice rhyme that easy to remember. It's so true. So
perfect.
It's awesome. Sweet, man. So thank you for being here. This is amazing.
Definitely.
I want to go over where they can find
that's exactly where I was going to go. So anyone listening, if you're interested in checking out more of this information, then Alex has, I think it was a website, like a blog, some information ways to share this and if you want, actually, I think it'd be kind of interesting to hear like briefly for anyone who got to the end of this episode of like the nuances that are happening right now for you, like to describe that so that it's very clear about like what you can and can't do technically as like the in the space that you're in the industry that you're in. So share all that. And then if you like anything you want about that, but then also like where can people connect with you?
Sounds good. Yeah. So you can connect with me on my website and it's financialzen.me. And then on that website, you can read a bit about my story and then you can sign up for the monthly newsletter.
Excellent.
Pretty simple. financialzen.me.
Yeah.
And in the financial space, being a financial professional, I've had to battle the system for the last year about teaching this information and getting paid for it. It hasn't been done in this space as far as I can see where a financial advisor, a financial professional teaches this and gets paid for it. So I've been working through and trying to find different firms who are able to support this. And it's been an interesting path. So that's where I'm at right now, is working with different companies on trying to find a platform that they can build that it can incorporate traditional finance within this more emotional understanding of financial world.
It's awesome. Yeah. And for some reason, I don't know, I just felt guided to ask you about that, to explain it, because who knows what can come from that, of you just sharing that and putting this out in this space. Just to hold that, at the very least, to hold the vision that does transpire in the years to come, because I would find it hard to believe anyone listening to this podcast not agree with everything you're sharing and not agree that this would be amazing information to be shared and to be widespread. So I'll hold that vision for you. And little request from everyone listening is if you can hold that vision for us too, because I really believe this information needs to go a lot further. So anyway,
great.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
Sweet. All right. We'll talk with you all in another episode. And that's it for today. So thanks for tuning in. And we really hope you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed recording it. So any questions, any comments, just connect with us on Instagram. You could always DM us at Kevin Francis Carton
and at Chris J. Carton. And also, if you feel guided to, the one thing we do ask is for you to please rate the podcast and leave us a review. This way we can reach more people and impact more lives with this amazing information. With that, we'll see you on the next episode.